Hello everyone! I wanted to share with you some tips on how I grow my miniature Phalaenopsis orchids and how that's different than the way that I grow my regular sized Phalaenopsis orchids. I used to try to grow them the same and it didn't work. I didn't realize that there were some big differences between miniature Phalaenopsis orchids and the regular sized ones. So let me just go through some tips that are going to really help you if you're struggling. These receive a lot more light than my regular sized Phalaenopsis orchids do. As a matter of fact, I grow them around my dendrobiums. They receive a lot of light, eastern facing exposure plus western facing exposure back here in my sunroom. I place them where they're going to get the most sunlight throughout the day. They really do like a lot of light. Also, I water these more often than I do my regular size Phalaenopsis, which that makes sense because they're in much smaller pots than the regular sized phals are, and they're in less moss. But the other thing is I keep a really good eye on the root systems, and I don't let them turn silvery gray before I rewater them. So with my regular size ones, I do let them dry out a little bit in between waterings, a little bit. But these, I water these every 3 or 4 days. I check to make sure that the top of the media is still just a little bit damp, and I like to check to make sure that the roots are still green. This one is getting kind of lightweight, I can tell. And so even though that root is still green and there's still a little bit of moisture in this pot, tomorrow I'm going to go ahead and water that one. It's been about 4 days since I watered that one. So I know that they don't like to dry out very much at all between waterings. They really like the water. They really like to be fertilized as well. Now, I use the same fertilizer recipe that I do with my larger phals. But you see, since I water them more often, that means I'm going to be fertilizing them more often as well. I fertilize these very often, once a week. So even sometimes when they're growing and when they're spiking, I will fertilize them 2 times in a row, and then the next time I'll use just plain CalMag and seaweed extract with them without the nitrogen. So they're getting a lot of nutrients at all times. They grow very, very quickly. Even though they're miniatures, for their size, they grow very fast. And the other thing I'm asked very often is, do you cut back the spikes on your miniature Phalaenopsis orchids? No, I don't. I keep them on the plant. They rebloom. When I keep the spikes on the plants, they almost always rebloom as long as they have been fertilized well. They normally will rebloom on those same spikes. Let me show you a for instance, because I'm having that happen with one of my miniatures. And these are the flower spikes that just got through blooming just about a month ago. And as you see, there's secondary spikes branching out in 3 different places. I don't like to cut my spikes back at all because you never know when a tip is going to rebloom for you as well. So I just let the plant decide how much of the spike it wants to keep, how much of it needs to reabsorb. But this time, this little phal has been really well fertilized. I've used the Better Grow, the CalMag, the seaweed extract, plus it has had the Epsom garden lime as well. And so it is very well fertilized, and as you see, it's not reabsorbing any of its spike. So this is what I'm aiming for right here, is for these spikes to rebloom. And I thought it would be helpful if I showed you where I place these in front of my windows. What you see in front of you is an eastern facing window, so they get light from the very beginning of the day. And over here is the western facing windows. So they get light much of the day. And as you see, they're growing here in my dendrobium forest. There's a lot of light in this area of my sunroom. So that's where I choose to locate them, and they really do thrive. And also, I have found that my miniatures do better in the New Zealand sphagnum moss than they do in bark, even small size bark. It's just easier to keep them watered. They really do like for their roots to be wetter than when you have them in bark. You're going to have to be really watering them a lot, or I do here in my environment. So it's just so much easier for me to grow them in moss to make sure that they get watered enough. And the moss really does keep them hydrated. So I've just noticed a big difference in mine since I've been growing them in the New Zealand sphagnum moss. I've just had better success that way. And the reason why I chose this little cross section of my Miniature Phalenopsis collection is these are the ones that I have done repotting videos throughout the summer. This one is my little espresso orchid that you can remember. It had 3 leaves, and it was so purple. It had a severe magnesium deficiency. And I just want you to look at this beautiful, happy little Miniature Phalenopsis. It's a no ID. I'll try to figure out what it is the next time it blooms. This one, I nicknamed her Violet. Beautiful mottled leaves on this little miniature. She's been down in this New Zealand sphagnum moss now for about 5 months. Of course, behind that is my Phal Soho Vivian. She is still blooming, and it looks like that other spike is going to elongate, and I'm going to have some more blooms on that one as well. And this one is one that I did late. Remember, I didn't know whether to keep it in its pot or whether to go ahead and repot it. And I had some people say, yes, go ahead and repot that one. Look how happy this one is, and it is keeping its 2 spikes. So I'm very happy with the way that these have grown and progressed. And I will give you all the fertilizer recipe that I am using on my miniatures this fall. I will put you a link in the description box below so that you'll have that. And I hope that this video helps you all have much success with your Miniature Phalaenopsis orchids. And you all just have a fabulous day and be highly favored, deeply loved, and greatly blessed. And we'll talk to you all next time.